Good morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg and it's the 6th day of February 2025. Welcome to our show today. I'm very excited about today because my favorite researcher, Jonathan Cagle, is going to be on today. And I'm going to tell you what, this guy is naming names. It's who's who in the zoo out there between corporate America and how they have used economic means to take over this nation. Complicit with our politicians, of course. So anybody that's out there in Michigan right now, we've got an icy wonderland. Please be careful. It is a little icy out there. For gosh sakes, do not go to work in pumps today because you're not going to make it. It's a little icy out there. But anyhow, take care of each other and let's make ourselves a force for good in this world. So let me bring on Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan, how you doing?
Hey, Donna, I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Hey, thanks for coming on today. I love it when you come on because I always learn so much, and there's so much going on right now out there. The big news that I saw is not only was USAID paying for the news media, bought and paid fake news right there, but they also did, let's see, I was reading it this morning, $17 billion in money flows through everything from Save the Children, PayPal, and the Tides Foundation. We've been watching the Tides Foundation for a long time, and that's a real concern. 68 million went to World Economic Forum. It just keeps adding up. This is absolutely nuts. But my best part of yesterday was finding out that we've got warthogs up in the air off the peninsula of Mexico. Shit's getting real.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. And it's funny that you mentioned the warthogs. So for most of your listeners probably know this because you're clued in and you know what you're talking about. But the A-10 is the warthog. And so it's basically the military's, especially troops on the ground, it's their favorite air support vehicle because it's basically a gun with a plane on it. And I can't remember what caliber it is. I think it's a 75 or something. But when I was growing up, I used to play this video game called UN Squadron, which looking back, the UN, them indoctrinating me into the UN at an early age is kind of messed up. But the Warthog was my favorite plane to play with. So anytime somebody mentions the Warthog, I have to make a comment about it. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, you know what? I'm a plain person, and I won't say the F word here because you know what it is. All of us that we're on, 4chan, 8chan, and 8kun, we all know all the words. And what I love about the warthog, there's a few things that I really, really like about it. One of the things is a filtration system that they have that detects metal shavings, and it kind of like, if it detects metal shavings, it kind of blasts them. So there's all these safety method or safety things that they put into aircraft. And if you are somebody who likes aircraft and studies them, I like the propulsion systems. I like how they different ways that they've diverted air to make engines more effective. I love the titanium box on the F-14. Favorite aircraft in the history of the world for me is the F-14, and I like F-14s and Blackhawks, and I don't know why. I just think they're amazing. And we all know that the SR-72 exists and SR-73. So there you go.
I was an F-18 guy growing up. I guess I came up a little bit later on. My dad worked on F-4 Phantoms and Harriers. So the vertical takeoff was always cool in the Harrier, and that's why I had to give Lockheed another contract to build vertical takeoff into the F-35. That whole cash sink, and it's interesting that we're talking about this because everything that's going on right now seems to be focused on USAID and how much of the grant monies had been handed out that are going to programs that we have, number one, no idea that they existed prior to, and number two, how can you reasonably justify so many of these things? And the F-35 is famously known as the largest cash suck for any air superiority 5th gen fighter, but any jet that we've ever had of all time. And of course, when the government builds something that's really great and they actually get it right, like the F-22, they have to move past that immediately and go into the next thing that they get wrong, so they can keep justifying sending themselves grant monies to continue making upgrades and whatnot. So
it's just one great big machine. The way that they used to do it is they put bids out for they would solicit people to come up with designs and such, and they wouldn't lock it down to the one manufacturer. They'd put it out and have several manufacturers working on this at the time, so that if somebody ran out of parts, they could kind of work together in a way. And I really think that it worked better the way that they used to do it than the way they do it now. Somebody comes up with a design, they own the design, even though we pay for the design, and we pay tremendous amount of money for the aircraft itself, or whatever equipment that's out there. It's kind of backwards, but I've got great hope right now because Donna Brandenburg is now doing the happy dance for everything that's going on with the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump. And very, very excited to see what's going on right now. At first, I was kind of like sitting back like I do and going, okay, let's see what's going to go on here, because the biggest concern I had is how quickly will and if the people will stay true and stay the course, or will the people just decide, okay, he's got it, I'm going to go back to my life and I'm not going to do anything, which is not okay. You know, we need to be supporting him and all the good guys that are fighting right now. And before we spike the football, everybody's got to get in the game.
Yeah, I think that there was a push right after the election for everybody to kind of take their foot off the gas and okay, we got him in and everything's all good. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, back in 2020, even before I really cared about politics, I was thinking, okay, I'm watching the Senate races, I'm watching the congressional House seats, I'm watching everything else going on, because yeah, they can't justify make people believe that Donald Trump loses to Kamala Harris. I always believed that to be the case. So it was either going to be the most egregious, we don't care that and I think that deteriorates quickly into kind of, the people aren't going to take it anymore kind of thing, to now they're going to just stalemate him with surrounding him by an adversarial Congress and start the whole impeachment, nonsense that they hit us with, that they really got rolling in the lame duck period after Donald Trump won the election against Hillary Clinton in 2016. And so I was sitting here watching 7 House races and Senate seats get stolen in the states of Arizona and Nevada and Michigan and Pennsylvania and North Carolina. North Carolina might have been the worst of all. And it's been relevant to a lot of the things that we've been talking about and that we've exposed. But they basically said, yeah, we voted for Donald Trump, and then every Democrat. No, you didn't. Like, come on. Like, nobody is voting for these policies that are taking jobs away from, basically factory worker, like Rust Belt on the East Coast that is Pennsylvania, that's so critically important to our manufacturing and our energy industries. And it's just, I was like, guys, now's not the time to, spike the ball. And then when Trump gets inaugurated, in between that November to January period seemed like a decade almost, that saying where it's like there's, decades where nothing happens, and then there's weeks where decades happen, and it's just like that's how it felt, and it was one thing after another, and I was just like, I hope that he realizes the job that he has and all that he needs to take care of when he gets in there. And so um, we talked about it last time. We were sitting there kind of frustrated, like, okay, when is this going to get addressed? Because we've been waiting for this for a long time. This wrong has to be righted. This corruption needs to be, addressed and sorted out. And thankfully, it seems like he is paying attention. And my thing was the FEMA thing and the LA fires thing, that we know there were bad actors involved in both of those situations. And I was just like, all right, the victory parade is over. I'm giving it 1 week to address this and this. Nothing else matters, because these are innocent Americans whose lives are being turned upside down. And like, that's all I can think about. And on that 7-day time frame, like day 4, like right in the middle. He addressed both of them. He went and visited North Carolina and he visited Los Angeles on the same day. And so it made me kind of rejuvenated that, okay, yeah, they are listening and they are paying attention to, and they've got the finger on the pulse of what matters to like regular everyday Americans who've been wronged and who are seeing their fellow countrymen being wronged as well.
Yeah, and I think that it's a new day. It's definitely a new day, and we may not understand everything that is going on right now, but the process is definitely going in the right direction. And some things I think are based on others. So they're predicated on other things or dependent on other things to happen first in order to have it be effective, smooth, and efficient. So like right now, I'm just kind of watching a few things. It's just like, everybody's freaking out over Gaza over there. Well, I know that we're in a new world right now. I mean, I think you and I could probably talk about this for a long time about the Middle East and the nonsense that we don't believe. I mean, it's been our country that has created the majority of the problems. It's not our country, it's not Americans, but it's a deep state, and it's the funding by the deep state actors and their puppets in office that have honestly funded a lot of this in collusion with our allies. And that, or not even our allies. It's a global crime syndicate. So to watch the enemy from within being ripped out by the roots and hopefully, left in a little burning pile of ashes is kind of glorious, right? And you can see a lot of people they're scared. Look at what happened at the FBI building and the DOJ building in this last week. These people are scared, and they should be. They've made some very, very poor life choices, and it's time, it's like you've made bad life choices. Now it's time to maybe reflect on what you've done wrong. And best reflection I can think is a one-way ticket to Gitmo and be gone with them. Just make the appointment with God. Goodbye. Nobody's going to miss you. You did bad things.
The last thing I saw yesterday before I went to bed was that they had now been granted access to Medicare and Medicaid, which is a whole like just rat infestation of corruption. And I think it was the Doge account that made the announcement. And so I quoted the Doge account and just through work that we had done over the last 2.5 years looking for, election fraud, kid trafficking, FTX manipulation, and obviously taxpayer subsidized funding of rackets all over the world, we came across the, people involved with Medicare and Medicaid, and some names that are going to be extremely important are Andy Slavitt, Kimberly Spina from EcoHealth Alliance. Andy Slavitt was Biden's number 2 at the, COVID response, and he was head of Medicare and Medicaid for President Obama. And so those two right off the bat are going to be extremely important because they both have obvious ties to the money laundering going on with Medicare and Medicaid, but also COVID itself. And then another is Rowan Cade, or Rowan Cade, however you say his first name. This guy's a consultant for Booz Allen Hamilton. Booz Allen Hamilton has Medicare and Medicaid as clients, and he's the co-founder and leader of BARDA Ventures. And for those who don't know, don't quote me on this. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but BARDA stands for the Biomedical Advanced Research Development Agency. It's within HHS, and it's part of DARPA. And a lot of the same people that we strongly believe were responsible for the whole COVID, pandemic itself are tied in with DARPA and HHS and BARDA to begin with. And so we found DARPA and HHS and BARDA had misappropriated or lost $158.7 million over the period of 2007 to 2016. So just an average of 51.87 million a year. And that's just one agency. That's not including the other, I don't know, 700,000, unnecessary government agencies that get their own, grant making and grant funding uh, areas within the GSA that absolutely steal from the American taxpayer and fund God knows what.
And the profit margins that people are making off these grants that they're writing, if people took a real look at how they're funding the people that wrote the grants and such, they would be shocked, absolutely shocked. It's far worse than I think anybody understands. So I'm always glad that you're on that sort of thing. So what else are we going to talk about today besides USAID? What's on your mind?
I mean, we can go any direction that you want to go. I mean, it's
I'm gonna let you take the lead on this one. So go ahead and well, let's just start rolling here.
So in the last couple of days, what I've been focusing on is I guess generally going after the deep state itself and these people that have managed to circumvent the sovereignty of the American people and circumvent our Constitution, and how have they been able to get away with it for so long, and why do they always seem to have just the right judge presiding over a case, or just the right person in oversight within our government that just manages to look the other way. And so I started looking into the real estate deals because there's a very specific timeline of subversion. And there's years that are, far more important that stand out as far as the coordinated, slow moving, but long term view takeover of the United States. And two of those years are 1972 and 1960, or 1972 and 76. And those are conveniently, 63 Kennedy assassination, 68 Robert F. Kennedy assassination, and then 4 years later, 1972. And so many of these things that we're dealing with today, one of them being Kleiner Perkins, which has gotten far too little attention and has probably gotten more tax dollars to build out our digital and cyber infrastructure in this country than any other organization, whether it receives the money directly or its portfolio companies receive the money directly from the government. And for those who don't know, Kleiner Perkins is Google, it's Akamai, it's Amazon, it is Sun Microsystems, it's Twitter, it's Genentech, which we know is hugely involved in the pandemic. And there's a famous picture where you have Barack Obama sitting around a table with all these Silicon Valley tech bros toasting each other, and Tim Cook is there from Apple, and Steve Jobs is there from Apple, and you have Eric Schmidt from Google, you have Kleiner Perkins there, you have Jeff Bezos, you have just a whole host of the bad guys, like the caricatures that we know, whose names we've heard a million times at this point. And they're sitting around a table, and this is when you realize they decided, in collusion with Obama, that they were basically going to censor Americans. They were going to take over arbitration of what is approved speech in this country, what's allowed to talk about, what is information, and what is misinformation or mal or disinformation. And that was, I still look at that picture and I think about it, I'm like, this is chilling. And John Doerr, who is the chairman of Kleiner Perkins, was certainly involved in that. And I'm just thinking to myself, how did they manage to even get the ability to build out all this infrastructure with all of these companies that posed for so long as, organic, just startups of brilliant thinkers who built up these apparatuses? Where did it come from? And there's like I said, there's a very calculated timeline, and there's events that happen that have helped to support the springboarding of those organizations. And the Kennedy assassinations are certainly part of it. 9/11 is certainly part of it. '08, and then obviously COVID has been another one of those springboards. And here we are. And finally, for the first time, we're seeing momentum go in the other direction. And thank God.
Yeah, I think everybody's pretty hopeful right now, seeing some actual action against the things that have been really eating on all of us. I know I have. I mean, as soon as the warthogs came up, I'll say it again, I was like, okay, this is getting real. Shit's getting real right now, which is really good. But and then the panic that we see from the people who are trying to hide things and deny access. Well, of course they are, because they're hiding their crimes, and they don't want somebody crawling all over them, and like what they did with President Trump and his documents and all that sort of thing. Turnabout's fair play, guys, and he didn't do anything wrong. You guys did. So it's going to be kind of an interesting step forward here, I think. What do you think is going to be coming next, down the pike?
With regards to what they're going to address next after they scatter USAID
what's your guess? What's your guess?
I think the next logical move would be to look at USAID and then look at the most central off-ramp arteries that it was feeding cash into. NDI, the National Democratic Institute, is certainly one of those. The National Endowment for Democracy, which is heavily involved in the LA fires, and the coordinated collusion with State Farm and Kaiser Permanente and the Reinsurance Association of America, and a number of other interested parties to cancel homeowners policies in California, 30,000 of them just months before the LA fires. So I think that after you cut out one of the central arteries, the next logical step is to go after the main off ramps. And you mentioned it at the beginning of the show, National Endowment for Democracy is certainly one of those that really needs a good colonoscopy, if you will, and preferably with no pain medication and no anesthesia. And then after that, there are these offshoots of those smaller organizations that do a lot of business, funnel a lot of money directly to themselves outside of the umbrella of USAID, and some of those are like McKinsey and Booz Allen Hamilton and Bain and Company, and McKinsey is probably, and Booz would be right there on the next plane of, we take out USAID, we take out those 3 or 4 key arteries off of USAID, and then Battelle is another one for the energy sector. It doesn't get enough attention. You have Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee. I've got a few of my, trusted colleagues on Twitter that talk a lot about Oak Ridge, and they don't get nearly the credit. And I don't know their handles offhand. I know them by their profiles and their names. One of them is Nuga Jack. I can't remember what his handle is, but he talks a lot about this shadow entity that basically runs Medicare and Medicaid, and it runs a lot of the grant makings processes for the CDC and for HHS. And that company is Maximus, and basically Maximus is a combination of Central Intelligence Agency, IBM, and a number of private equity firms that are interested in certain companies getting funded. So that's the logical natural progression. I think that McKinsey needs to be scattered to the wind. I think that Gavin Newsom and his pals in California have been more deeply in bed with McKinsey and some of those people involved behind it. And one of the names that's going to be specifically relevant for McKinsey is Lenny Mendonca, Mendonca. He is going to be extremely important. He basically built out McKinsey's consulting practice on the West Coast, and senior partner emeritus, part of New America with a whole host of, you know, spooks, CIA, and open society, Soros, bad guys. And these people are truly trying to steal America out from under us, and getting tons and tons of our tax dollars to do so, under our noses.
It is very, very sobering. So, back to the fact that 17 billion went to Save the Children. And when you talk to anybody is Save the Children, PayPal, and the Tides Foundation, when you talk to anybody that has been either involved or tracking with the amount of child trafficking that's going on in the United States, I don't even think any of us can find words to the evil that these people are involved in with, child trafficking, with human trafficking, and hiding behind all of these nonprofits and NGOs and such that are out there. But I've got a feeling that they're tied in with these corporations in a big way, just like when you look at the political people and how much dark money and PAC money they're taking. The unlimited money comes from the corporations, the corporate side of things. So there's got to be a lot of links there too that we could explore in these comorbid organizations.
For sure. And we can address all three of those. Save the Children, you mentioned, and then you also mentioned two others. What were they?
Remind me. Foundation.
Tides Foundation.
Yeah, but there's more. It's like the Tides Foundation. That's a real interesting one for me. For years ago, that kept just coming to the top. Anytime I was researching, Tides Foundation was coming to the top, and it just seems like they're kind of like one of those pervasive squid organizations. Got its little tentacles in so many different directions. And I think that's really what we're dealing with is organizations that's what they do. They're like a squid. They kind of move out like that to obfuscate where the head of that organization is. But as in everything, all the organized crime that's going on, it's like an organism, and it has different cells. And those different cells are kind of connected loosely with each other. And some of them are closer tied, but they're all kind of tied together in the end of the day.
For sure. And I certainly have a few key names to give everybody from Tides Foundation, as well as Save the Children, that are extremely important. And there was one other that you said that is incredibly relevant. I want to make sure that we address all three of these. PayPal. Okay, yeah, absolutely. So you pick the order that we go in, and we'll just start addressing each of those. And I think that
since you're making
will be shocked.
Since you're making the case, why don't you do the logical progression to expose all three of these?
Okay. Let me light my cigarette real quick.
Yeah, it's gonna get ugly. And I've got the coffee here. This is you know what coffee is and chocolate? Do you know what it really is? It's the line around the food pyramid that holds everything else together.
Sorry. Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's I used to be a, more, I won't say how many cups I drank because I'm ashamed of it, and I don't want to be the guy that's like, oh, you drank 62 cups of No, I didn't. But I will say I drank more than I needed to, or I probably should admit, but I switched to energy drinks. That way I can drink 2 of them a day, but sip on it throughout the day. And it, I don't have that, mid coffee cigarette just rage moment where I'm just like, I just fucking hate everybody like that. And at like 6 o'clock in the morning, when you're already at a level 11, it's like, I might need to change it up a little bit. But yeah, it's crazy because
it's the
there's
opposite
nothing.
Effect to me. This baby has saved people's lives. I'm pretty sure of.
There is nothing as good as the first cigarette and coffee in the morning, like before the sun's up, and you're just like, oh, okay, I can make it through another day. I think
we can do this again. Okay, so where are we going to start from?
So I think it makes sense to probably start with PayPal,
Okay. Follow the money.
because everybody hears about the PayPal mafia, but they probably don't have a keen understanding of who the PayPal mafia is and who's involved with them. And so I hope to give a little bit more clarity on what they are. But the PayPal mafia, PayPal is part of something that was created back in the early 2000s in Rehavat, Israel. And it is the Chabad network, CHABAD. And so you had PayPal and you have Google, that and Gmail, which was the original. Them and Outlook were always the you either have Google Mail or you have Microsoft. And so um, they've been around and coordinating a lot longer than most people realize. And you have Reid Hoffman with LinkedIn, you have Elon with Tesla and SpaceX, and um, Boring Company, and now Twitter X, and then you also have Mark Andreessen, you have Peter Thiel, you have all of these people that seem to almost branch out into like tentacles, almost like we were just talking about,
It's the
to
squid.
to cover each of these uh, different domains. And you look at the people behind them and who Chabad is, and it's funny that we're talking about these three organizations: PayPal and Save the Children and Tides Foundation. If you look at Save the Children, their partner organizations are Boston Consulting Group, Clinton Foundation, Chabad, Teneo, McCain Institute, and then a few others where they basically pretend that they're not directly linked, but they are because they share the same boards of directors. You have organizations like Planned Parenthood and Booz Allen Hamilton, and a few others that I might be forgetting. Center for New American Security, but those are the key ones, and we'll talk about each of the the people involved with those organizations because they're certainly relevant today. They're the most relevant today to all of the riffraff that we're seeing, especially Booz Allen Hamilton with Save the Children and another organization that's very much like Save the Children called Care USA, and another organization that's just like those called International Rescue Committee. And all of them get bukus of tax dollars in support for the trafficking of humans and children, and unfortunately the harvesting of organs. And an organization that encompasses basically all of those is called Santander, and Larry Summers is part of it. Um, Glenn Hodgins is part of it from Silver Lake. You have Michelle Flournoy at Booz Allen Hamilton, and Horatio Rosansky from Booz Allen Hamilton, who both work closely with Glenn from Silver Lake. And you see the same names popping up, and you start to realize this is all just one big distinction without a difference money laundering racket to subsidize the most degenerate um, acts of that we could probably fathom. And then at Tides Foundation, you have two very key people, and one of them is Jason Wingard, and he's somebody that's on my feed that I've talked about. He is basically the linchpin between Columbia University and Penn, and Columbia is relevant because they just someone called Data Republican, who I encourage everyone to check out and follow. They're putting out great information.
It's amazing. I've gone. I've been following that, and that is it's an amazing. Whoever's behind this is amazing.
Yeah, and they're putting out basically spiderweb mind maps of the organization so that people can see them and the interlinked connections. And one of the maps that they had put out had 6 billion, 6.07 or 6 point, I think it was $6.07 billion was going to these 16 or 17 different organizations, and one of them was the trustees of Columbia University, which is Columbia, and Columbia University was getting 1.2 of that. They were getting 1.27 or 1.24 billion dollars. So they were getting almost a quarter of it by themselves. And Jason Wingard is especially keen here because he connects Penn and he connects Columbia and he connects Kroll and Duff and Phelps and Focus Financial Partners, which are basically private fixer organizations doing the off books dirty work for massive organizations like Columbia and Penn that will have tons more eyes on them. And Jason Wingard, he was actually the vice dean at Penn, and then went to be dean emeritus, I believe, at Columbia University. And so it's on my feed. If you want to pull his last name up, it's spelled Wingard. He is a key centerpiece, and he and Cory Booker and Dan Goldman of Goldman Sachs and the Levi Strauss family, they also have a role in 10/7, in the 10/7 attacks. And so the color revolution, or the false flag operations where thousands or even tens of thousands of people get killed to justify creating additional let's fight bad guys NGOs or private organizations that they can then send more of our tax dollars to. It's absolutely grotesque, and it needs eyes.
What was his first name?
Jason.
There we go. I'll bring him up here. Yeah, they're all connected. I think George Carlin said it best. There's a great big club, and we ain't in it, guys. We are not in it.
But yep. He was prophetic, wasn't he?
For sure. And extraordinarily funny. It's hilarious.
One of my favorites for sure. Yeah. If I don't know if you want to pull up my account, I have the bullet points that are highlighted on him and the organizations that are directly tied into the Tides Foundation. And I'll mention this real quick. There is somebody from the Betsy DeVos network that is also a higher up at the Tides Foundation. And so I figure I know how pertinent that is. I know how pertinent that is for you. So those are the two that are, to me, stand out the most because, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I posted a picture that I had with both her. I think I sent it to you with her and Eric Prince that I ran into last week over in DC. And people are like, this is bad. This is bad. And I'm like, Brandenburg runs right into the fire. And, it's amazing how people react when you walk out to them. Hey, Betsy, how you doing? It's so nice to see you here. How about we take a picture right now? And it's like the deer in the headlights look, and but yesterday she did praise President Trump for getting rid of the Department of Education, which I thought was a wonderful step in the right direction. So I'm kind of wondering if the word controlled is appropriate here.
Yeah, it's funny that
how that works.
She commended Trump for removing or ending the program that she used to run. And she was the first person off the boat at the end of the last administration after J6 that we know they had a huge hand in, Manhattan Institute, which Betsy DeVos is part of, as is Bill Barr, as is Maurice Greenberg, as is Daniel Loeb, as is Ravenel Curry, and a whole host of other, color revolution bad actors that do more acting and bad than they do anything else good for this country.
All right, so I'm going to just say it. So she resigns on January 7th, and all of a sudden, miraculously, Pence gets a huge payoff. I think it was like $22 million, but there's some question that it could have been $75 million. And questioning exactly where did that come from, people? I think it's a good one to look up and dig into for all of us who have perhaps already looked into this. But the other thing about DeVos is that nature boy and girl there who said that they're all into natural products and such, they have Graham. They were behind Graham up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which I allege that Michigan is the head of the snake. Okay. We got the whole Dutch mafia crap going on up here and on and on and on. So anyhow, which is in league with the Dutch banksters. So anyhow, they had Graham going on up here, and they built a $40 million facility out by the airport, which was funded by Arlington Capital. And they were literally packaging and producing the jab up here in 4 different facilities. Now you tell me how this
Arlington Capital.
This tells me how this jives with their little island down there in the Caribbean that they've got. Fairly certain it's pretty close to Epstein's Island. I'm sorry, I am not buying the bull crap from anybody anymore. And then, we can take it one step further and look into Mr. Eric. And, we were talking about Sean Ryan, and everybody out there is, oh, yay, Sean Ryan. First time I watched this guy, I'm like, he's CIA. Look at him. He sits back all kinds of cool in the chair. So what's happening here? Like he's all casual, in the know, and such. And I'm like, dudes, if you're believing this nonsense, this guy came from out of nowhere, I'm sorry, but I can't help you at this point in time. And
if every time I watch you, you've got like a piece of paper you're holding like this, like, and talking like this, like looking down like you got fucking bifocals, but you don't wear glasses, I don't trust you.
Right. I'm done. Right. I'm done at that moment in time. And then sitting back like they're all cool and they're in the know, man, listen to me. And I'm like, okay, let's get a little bit better with body language reading out there, guys, and who is actually for real and who's just CIA, Mossad, GCHQ repackaged. And so let's talk about Eric Prince for just a minute, because you brought up Betsy DeVos and such. So, we're out there saying, yip, Skippy, President Trump, who we betrayed, is now the greatest guy in the world. And thank God he's getting rid of the Department of Education, which she was a part of. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of a little bit cynical perhaps, but maybe
that'd be like you hiring me to do a job and run an organization, and then I help run it into the ground, turn my back on you, and then 4 years later I'm like, thank God Donna is getting rid of that bullshit. Like, that doesn't make what sense does that make? But yeah,
is this the time that I show the photos that I've got your feed up here too? You want to go there, or you want to see some photos on the ground reporting in DC from Donna Brandenburg, the biggest out there pain to the bad guys. So here we go. We can go down this. Well, I'll bring it up later, but there's Jonathan. Follow him. If you haven't followed him, you're making a big mistake. Follow him. And Jonathan sends me videos of music at great times, and when he's winding down at night, and I always appreciate. I love your music. You do a great job.
I appreciate it, Donna.
Talented, and always makes me happy to get a video. Okay, so where are we going to go with this? How far down?
So you look at Eric Prince. If you just go up to the search bar or whatever on my feed and you type in Wingard, we can basically do Eric Prince and Jason Wingard at the same time. I don't know if you're logged in or not. Or
I'm not logged in here. Let's see if I can. I know I'm logged in somewhere, but I actually don't log in on this computer.
So, I gotcha.
Yeah.
You don't have to then if it's not going to let you.
Do you want to share your screen?
Let me see if I can.
You go down into present.
I'm looking down at more, and when I click on more, It just gives me comments, recordings,
If
settings, and
you go
cancel.
down to present and then hit
I don't have a present button. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, you don't have a present button?
Mm-mm.
Oh, because you're on your phone. Okay, sorry. All right. Well, let's see if I can get this thing figured out here a minute. Here, if you want to just keep talking, I'll fiddle with this until I get it to work.
Yeah. So Eric Prince, his company that he founded, Blackwater, had a lot of questions after 9/11 because people that were involved in the cover up and involved in the execution of 9/11 sat on his advisory board, like Alvin Krongard from Apollo Global Management, who later ended up acquiring Blackwater in 2016 for, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of between 400 and 600 million dollars. It had changed its name after a few mergers at that point to Constellus, but Blackwater was hugely important because they had one of the large government contracts. There's that word again, to basically promote vaccine compliance, and that's going to be incredibly important for Robert F. Kennedy, because two entities basically worked side by side to scrape the internet for vaccine mis and disinformation, supposedly, and increase vaccine adherence and compliance. And so Eric Prince's company, Constellus, which was bought out by Apollo Global Management, the 9/11 fraudsters, they were pushing the vaccines on people, and they were pushing FDA approved vaccines and therapeutics. That was the role that Constellus had, in collusion with Gavi, which we recently found out got, I don't know, all the money in the world, whatever. And then you had another organization called Kroll. And this one's going to be directly relevant for Robert Kennedy and his situation personally, because Kroll is founded by Jules Kroll, 1972. I mentioned the timelines, the specific years where things happen towards the slow moving but coordinated takeover of America. And 72 and 76 were very pertinent years. In 72, that's when Kleiner Perkins was founded, that I'd already mentioned. That's when Jules Kroll, his organization, J. Kroll and Associates, which was his first private security and investigative firm, was founded. And that's when his wife's firm, Jewish Communal Fund, which basically is a tax dollars receiving and Mossad slush fund in the United States. And why is Jules Kroll and Robert F. Kennedy, why are they connected? Well, Jules Kroll was on Robert Kennedy's campaign staff in 68 and had something to do with the assassination of Robert Kennedy. Well, fast forward to today, and RFK Jr. is going to be the vaccines and the big pharma, let's get justice for the American people. And one of the organizations that he is going to be or have the opportunity, I'm not saying he will or won't, I hope obviously that he does, but he's going to have the opportunity to go after literally the same people that were behind the murder of his dad, his uncle, and his cousin. And what Kroll did while Constellus was pushing compliance, Kroll was scraping the internet for true, like, testimonies of people who were injured by these vaccines. They were identifying them, they were flagging them as mis, and disinformation, and they were removing them. So people who had been harmed, people who had been coerced into taking these quote unquote vaccines to keep their livelihoods or have access to their kids or whatever, and had been injured and harmed by them, they were removing their ability to cry out for help. And that's the most heinous part to me. And Kroll, if we want to go back to the overlap between Kroll and Eric Prince, Kroll, Jules Kroll, and Brian Michael Jenkins, his deputy chairman, and L. Paul Bremer from Kissinger McClarty, they were hugely involved in planning and executing 9/11 itself. And so you had Alvin Krongard in the mix, who also sat on the board of directors of Blackwater, also a director at Apollo Global Management. This guy was on the board at Blackwater while Kroll and Jules Kroll's people were helping to plan 9/11. And it's literally a recycling of the same bad guys. And the reason that is because they know that they've done some of the most heinous things in world history that, H.W. himself said, if the American people ever found out what we've done, they'd chase us down the streets and lynch us. And imagine to be, this is HW. Dan Quayle and HW, the two biggest spook,
Bad guy.
operatives that ever served in the role of president and vice president together, openly saying if the American people ever found out what we've done, think about how bad it must be. Like with everything, if it was only as bad as everything we know about already, I mean it's still grotesque and it's hard to fathom.
The tip of the iceberg right now, and I don't know about you, but the last couple of days and watching how things have gone, I contacted a couple of my friends who are pretty in the know on things, and I said I just feel like there's something huge that's going to drop here fairly quickly. It doesn't seem like we're right there where things are happening, but there's going to be one of those moments where nobody's going to be able to look the other way when the big kahuna of all kahuna drops on us, and everybody's going to have to come to terms with what has actually happened. Now, I think we're in the wind up right now, but I think it's going to drop, but I don't know when, and I don't know exactly what they're going to drop, but it just seems like something's getting ready to get really real.
And going back to that whole idea of how did they, possibly ever get away with it for so long that it got to this point? How did they get the ball pushed this far down the field? And you realize that would require complicitness from oversight and these supposedly, self-regulatory bodies that are tasked with oversight and keeping us safe and preventing fraud and collusion and coercion.
And they're involved.
Yeah, and you realize that it literally requires them, the bad guys, to be able to put their people atop of these oversight bodies. And one of the key people in that realm, as far as the financial fraud and as far as the terrorism financing, if you will, ties us into National Endowment for Democracy. Really, three people. One of them is Eric Knoll, Noll, who is the chairman of the board of governors for FINRA. He is Stone Ridge Capital, and Stone Ridge Capital was founded by and originally funded by Noah Gottdiner, who is in the lineage of Alan Dulles, used to actually live in Alan Dulles's old condo. He's the executive chairman of Kroll. He's the CEO of Duff and Phelps, and he is who Jason Wingard reports directly to from the board of directors at Kroll. Jason Wingard on the board of trustees at Kroll. He's vice dean at Penn prior to becoming the dean emeritus, where he currently is at Columbia University. And Columbia, like I mentioned, they got at least $1.25 billion in taxpayer monies over from that graphic that I think you briefly pulled up a little bit ago. I don't know what time frame that's over, but it wouldn't shock me at all to learn that was just 1 year. And then prior to that, the day before, we find out that this organization called Jewish Family Services is getting $600 million every 2 months to finance the coordinated border invasion of our country. And I'm doing the math, for the math whizzes out there, that's $3.6 billion a year. And you're like, pardon my French, but what the fuck? Like, this is treason. Like, the government exists, it's kind of like in the bylaws of America to defend our borders, not breach the borders and invade our country. Who's behind this? And, we just got done with, Mayorkas 4 years being, DHS secretary and helping to, push the coordinated invasion all over again. And you remember that another of these entities that gets tons and tons of money to subsidize the coordinated invasion of our country, HIAS, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, Mayorkas was on the board when he was being nominated by Biden to be the DHS secretary. And so you're like, what the hell's going on? And so it just, it becomes clear that the people in leadership not only don't give a shit about America, they actually want to destroy America and send aid to other countries, and really you think, how could somebody do this? Like, what's the goal? And it's clear that, we're dealing with hostile takeover of, basically, the superpowers that are loyal to themselves. Like that seems to be the key target. Any country that is sovereign, that is superpower right there, that wants to be populist, wants to be nationalist, wants to have secure borders, seems to be a target by this little faction of countries known as Ukraine and Israel in the Middle East. And it's just like, guys, I thought we were allies. Like, you wouldn't tolerate us doing what you're doing to us for a second. Like, imagine if we flooded Ukraine's borders or Israel's borders with people from third world, and we were sending Ukraine and Israel's tax dollars to ourselves to fund it. Imagine how that conversation would go. These countries would cease to exist within months. Like, I don't know if it would take that long. And then you realize that these people that are embedded within our government, they all seem to be funded by these same entities too. And it all seems to tie right back into the people who were behind COVID and 2008 and 9/11 and even the Kennedys. And, what I found yesterday was in alignment with that same timeline, 72, 76, 01, and then 2022, 3 and 4, are these real estate deals. Because you start wondering how they always have the person in the right position to look the other way. And there's a guy by the name of L. Felipe Restrepo. He was nominated by President Obama in 2014 to a federal bench. And then I think Trump reappointed him in 2018 to another position. I can't remember if it's the appellate or just the federal bench itself. And then somehow he gets promoted all the way to being vice chairman, where he currently is, appointed by Biden to be vice chairman and commissioner of the bipartisan U.S. Sentencing Commission. And you're talking about the people that tell us what the penalties are for certain crimes in this country, the people that are trying to ease the harshness of punishment for child sex crimes. People behind Ketanji Brown Jackson and Dick Durbin, hugely involved with that coordinated push. And you're like, who is this, El Felipe, I can't even remember the dude's name Restrepo, that I just said. I mean, this makes me really, really pissed. How did he get selected? Because you realize that everybody that's in a certain position at that level is there for a reason. It's not a good reason for the American people. And so, Sentencing Commission, the guy who's the commissioner and vice chair, yeah, that's a pretty important position, especially if pedophiles don't want the death penalty, which they deserve. And kid traffickers don't want the death penalty, which they deserve. Or illegal immigrants who come across our borders and murder American white girls, like in Georgia, which they deserve. The death penalty. They are trying to remove that. So you have to have your own people in charge of the Sentencing Commission. And famously enough, if you'll remember when Ketanji Brown Jackson was being confirmed, Dick Durbin was overseeing that, and Dick Durbin is a pedophile. He's a Jeffrey Epstein Island visiting absolute ghoul pedophile. And he was overseeing that, and we're all sitting here realizing that you're only letting us see 30% of her work from the sentencing committee when she served on it. Where's the other 70 fucking percent, Dick? This is not just any,
It's
county
coordinated.
judge. It's the Supreme Court. We're gonna see everything. No, you've got to. No, we fucking don't. Next, we're gonna look at what you've done. What have you been up to, Dick? And Dick is the one that's keeping the Epstein files from being released. Just FYI. And so one of the key ones behind that. But you realize that Ketanji Brown Jackson, time after time after time after time, has gone light on sentencings for child sex criminals. And that's not okay with me. And so this guy, I'm like, okay, this guy's the new chair. Who is he? And then you realize that going back to 72, there's a guy by the name of Luis Restrepo. And so I guess this judge goes by Luis as well. But it clearly appears to be a father-son or a uncle-son relationship. I would imagine it's just father-son. Going back to 72, this guy gets into these real estate deals with a guy by the name of Fernando Ancine or Fernando Ancini. And I say or because he's listed as both things on separate real estate deals. And one of the ways that they avoid detection is they just change one letter in the name. Or
that's an old FBI trick, and they've been doing that for a long time. Like, we saw with we've seen this over and over again in Michigan. We've got somebody here that has done this over and over, and you can find this information if you have any questions by going to something like Lara in the state of Michigan and punching in an address, and you'll see the people that have registered will register their name with misspellings, and the misspellings are intentional.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so his last name is either Ancin or Ancini. So it's either Ancine or Ancini. It sounds Italian, but he is Ministry of Telecommunications for this small country outside of Argentina. And I'm like, this sounds like some Italian, Spanish mafia shit. And you look at Luis Restrepo, his wife, Dora Restrepo, and the real estate deals and the people that they're involved with. And then you fast forward you see 72 and 76, and then you see a gap. There's those, doldrums period in between the years where decades happen. And then fast forward to 2001, and you see 4 transactions for Louis Restrepo, and you see 1 transaction for Louis or El Felipe Restrepo, the current commissioner of the Sentencing Commission. And it's funny because we spent a lot of the last show talking about the plane and the helicopter collision that involved that pilot, Rebecca Lobach, the helicopter pilot, who worked for, or whose sister, I should say, Elizabeth Lobach, worked for New Regency in Hollywood. Elizabeth works at New Regency for Arnon and Yuriv Milchich or Milnich, I think is, if you just search by YARIV, that's the son who's the chairman and CEO of New Regency. The father who founded it is literally an Israeli spy who was one of the top secret spies that was behind the Kennedy assassination and helped Israel develop its nuclear program and still our uranium in collusion with the South African apartheid regime. And Arnon Milnich, I think it's Milnich, he's basically part of Israel's top secret intelligence force called the Lekem, Lekem, and he worked directly with Israeli President Shimon Peres.
Hmm.
He was an arms dealer and top secret nuclear intelligence official for Israel, and he's still in Los Angeles operating, and his son runs the company today. And the helicopter pilot Rebecca Lobach, her sister Elizabeth, works directly for those guys. And going back to El Felipe Restrepo and Louis Restrepo, in 2001, you see Louis Restrepo literally 2 months, 3 months after 9/11, transfers a property to Yuriv Restrepo and his wife. And I can't remember the wife's name, but I'm looking at all these transactions of who these people are in bed with. And you see a transaction to the Chinese in January. You see a transaction, and these are selling properties to. Then you see a transaction in April, and then you see one of interest that happens, I believe, in June of 2001. And the one in June is basically the acquisition of a property that I think is either an apartment complex or two single family homes or one and one, but it's 271 and 273 Oak Street in Passaic, New Jersey. And Passaic has been important to our conversation with regards to the nursing home murders of people that the governors put old people in assisted living facilities to kill them during COVID, and Phil Murphy and Gretchen Whitmer over there in Michigan.
She's like the poster child for what a human being should never be like.
Yeah. And, you also had Cuomo, whose attorney is a high-ranking executive for Apollo. And then you have DeWine, and you have one other whom I can't remember who. DeWine is in Ohio, and then there's one other whose name escapes me at the moment. Maybe it's Walls. I don't know, in Minnesota, but it would make sense. But
Could it be Burgum?
I don't think Doug Burgum. I don't think it was him. But anyway, you look at these people, and Passaic is relevant because we know one of the facilities where they did this. That facility is called Preakness. It's owned by a guy by the name of Stuart Kaplan, who is part of Leading Edge and Self Help, and he is one of the directors of growth of UJA Federation, which is the 9/11 people like Larry Silverstein, James Tisch, and currently today the CEO of Apollo, and who is also the chairman of the Wharton School at Penn that we've been talking about, where Jason Wingard comes in between Penn and Columbia. His name is Mark Rowan. Who is Mark Rowan? He's the co-founder of Apollo and the CEO, and he co-founded it with one of Jeffrey Epstein's longest time associates, Leon Black. And Leon Black ran Apollo for the longest time until people found out that he had been dishonest and lying about his relationship and the nature of it with Jeffrey Epstein, because he said, and he got caught paying Epstein $158 million to save himself about $1.7 billion in back taxes that he owed, because Epstein gives the best tax advice, is what I hear. But so Leon Black, when that came out,
stuff up. You just can't even make this stuff up. It's so crazy.
When that came out, he stepped away, and Mark Rowan stepped into that role, and so he's the CEO now, and he's the chairman of the Wharton School at Penn, and he's also the chairman of UJA Federation. The president of UJA Federation is Amy Bressman, Who is Amy Bressman? Well, she's the sister of Julie Platt, who is the vice chairman and at one point recently was chairman of the board of trustees at Penn. She's also the chairman of the Jewish Federations of North America, which is hugely involved with the LA fires shit in Los Angeles, the FEMA shit in North Carolina, and is the parent company or parent organization of UJA Federation. And Julie Platt is especially relevant for Michiganders because Michigan, in its budget for 2024, allocated $15 million to pay for private security for Julie Platt, who is from Hollywood, vice chair or chairman of Penn, and for some reason needs Michigan to pay $15 million for private security from Jewish Community Services Incorporated, which is in partnership with the Secure Community Network, SCN. And those are the organizations that they found in the Michigan budget were getting the money. And we just so happen to have a SCN executive. His name is Matthew something. I can't remember the last name. He's on the DHS Advisory Council. And I'm like, why is he on the, and then you look a little bit, in the fine print and you realize that Julie Platt also is the chairman and CEO of Secure Community or Live Secure. It's two organizations that are partnered together, Live Secure and Secure Community Network. And they both make up, in addition to the JCSI that I just mentioned, they all together make up this private security consortium that is getting $15 million from Michigan. And so she's the chairman and CEO of Live Secure. They are earmarking money into their own companies that they profit off of while protecting themselves from the American people who are getting wise to all the bullshit that they've been doing to the American people. That's where we're at. And they're putting them in bed with our own Department of Homeland Security, which only exists to protect the CIA and Israel from further investigation about 9/11. And, I've got to watch my feed with Bucky Sexton coming, and saying bullshit about, we need to do this. No, you need to shut the fuck up. You should have done your job in 2001 when you sat idly by as our own CIA elements were colluding clearly with these foreign interests to kill thousands of Americans. Like, I don't need you to arbitrate to me or dictate to me what decorum is or how we need to handle shit. You need to be under Gitmo as far as I'm concerned, like direct ticket to Guantanamo. And everybody who knew about it and looked the other way needs to be right there with you. And, these people at Penn and Columbia colluded directly against the American people. And Penn is where the technology for the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine that harms so many people was developed. Meanwhile, Columbia is where COVID, in collusion with the CIA, InQTel, and Vice Provost Michael Crow, who's the chairman of InQTel and the president of Arizona State, he worked directly with the top Mossad and GCHQ spy in the country who runs Columbia, Jerry Spire. And these are the people that had all this money invested in COVID and invested in remdesivir and had Palantir, our buddies at PayPal Mafia, at Chabad Network coming back around. That Palantir has been partnered with Kroll since 2012, at least. These same people knew that not only was remdesivir not effective, it was nephrotoxic. And not only that hydroxychloroquine was effective, it was superior at every stage.
You can make
of
any
COVID,
money off of
COVID.
this stuff, and that's what it's all about. It's a money game, and it's killing people for money, intentionally knowing what they were doing.
Yep, and that's why I don't think that there's any way. There isn't. I'm not going to speculate. There's no way that the American people move on without getting justice for that because on March 8th, they knew remdesivir was ineffective. On March 16th, they knew hydroxychloroquine was superior as a prophylactic, meaning before infection, at early post-infection, and at late stage post-infection. Oral hydroxychloroquine, cheap, safe, effective, available. Orally, so not invasive. But they needed their $7,000 per IV infusion of remdesivir, and they carved out fraudulently a small niche in the timeline of COVID infection. They called it late stage severe COVID. And they hid the studies that showed hydroxychloroquine was effective and superior to remdesivir at every stage, including that niche that they carved out. And Palantir was in bed with it and knew about it. And the people that fund Palantir, 8VC and Lightspeed, are the same people that were tied in at Columbia. You have people like Arie Belldegrun, who is owned by Gilead. That's the remdesivir manufacturers. You have Mark Andreessen, you have Peter Thiel, you have, John Tennant, big Palantir founder. Guess who he is? He's the son of George Tenet, who appointed Alvin Krongard 6 months before 9/11 to be the number 3 guy at the CIA, the same Alvin Krongard that sat on the board of Blackwater.
Oh my God.
These people, like, there's no scenario where we just fucking forget about all that and move on and let bygones be bygones. And all of these Silicon Valley tech bros who think they're just going to mosey in and cozy up to Trump and we're going to be defenseless to do anything because they've gotten the favor of our white knight. No. Trump or no Trump, we're not moving on without accountability. There are people that deserve the death penalty several times over, at worst life imprisonment, and deserve to have no access or say to the civic responsibilities and events involving American life. None whatsoever. And if you think for a second we're just going to spend the next 4 years looking the other way and forgetting about it, it's never going to fucking happen.
That's what they're counting on. They're counting on people saying, okay, I'm comfy here in my house and I guess it's better for us. So, how bad can it be? But then you've got people like yourself and myself that is like, until my last breath, we're going to fight this thing and expose their crimes and bring justice forward. Same thing with the elections. The 2020 election has got to be righted, and everything going forward with that. We can't just forget that they did this because they have queued this up. And I've got a report that's going to be coming out shortly. I think I've talked to you about it a little bit. That is so damning on so many levels of what actually happened. It's truly going to be a shock for people. I'm still doing a few fact checking exercises on it right now, but everything lines up the way that it's looking like it lined up. Guys, we have not had an election, and they have had this stuff rigged so beautifully for themselves to install their puppets and keep their little global crime syndicate going. But the game's about to be up here, and everybody's going to know exactly what they did. And then that's the only way you can fix it. You've got to look at the problems. And I know you probably get dinged on this, and I do too, for talking about the problems and analyzing. You have to analyze. You've got to see the problems and see how they did it and how they work together to make these criminal activities so strong that it appears we can't take them down, but we can. The whole Citizens United that came forward that gave the corporations the right to be a person. Well, the corporations need to be treated like a person. They do crimes like this that actually resulted in the deaths and intentional deaths of people. They're guilty of crimes against humanity. And thank God for Citizens United, because they stupidly thought that it was going to do one thing, but we're going to take all of their weapons that they created against us and use it against them.
Yeah, and you look at, who these people are behind COVID and all the grotesque things that they've done and money that they've stolen from us. And you also realize that they're the same people that are behind the digital infrastructure that
The
we were basically,
technocracy.
yeah, the technocracy of the Google and the Akamai and the Kleiner Perkins and the
Volunteer.
Amazon and Palantir and Anduril, which is Matt Gates' brother-in-law, like Palmer Luckey. We hadn't forgotten about that. And we know you work with Mark Zuckerberg and Oculus. We hadn't forgotten about that. We know that you guys set up this apparatus with the Chinese. And this kind of goes back to what I had figured out basically 2 days ago after pouring into this stuff, because there was clear coordination between uh, this Asia US kind of factions within our country that was determined to subvert whites and Christians and conservatives in the United States. And it stems very closely to Henry Kissinger and Maurice Greenberg from AIG. And I look at all the bad guys who are funding a lot of the organizations that we're dealing with right now, like with J6 and COVID and FTX and Robinhood and all that bullshit. Like, and these same organizations all go back to AIG and Jerry Spire with Columbia and Mark Rowland with Penn and Maurice Greenberg with AIG and his son Jeffrey Greenberg, who founded Marsh McLennan, who acquired Kroll in I think 2004 or 2005 and had Jules Kroll as their vice chairman, and who that same Marsh McLennan today is involved with the disasters in Los Angeles and the disasters in North Carolina that aren't just natural disasters, they're coordinated terror attacks and sabotaged disaster relief responses by these same people who are paid with our tax dollars to help American citizens in those moments. And they're telling us they can only get $750. Meanwhile, they send all the money on God's green earth to Ukraine and Israel. I'm just like, this is not tenable for America.
This
It's
is not
not
okay.
gonna.
It's not okay. And all these people that hold dual citizenship, this should never ever have happened, because that they take over not by direct attack. Evil in all forms takes over by infiltration. They don't create anything new. They're not smart enough to do that, quite honestly. So not like everyday working Americans who figure things out on the ground and make businesses and grow businesses and know how to do that. These people have most of them never signed a paycheck. They've never truly grown anything. All they do is take over. They're parasites, and they parasitically take over. So you got people with dual citizenship. Who are they really loyal to? Well, it sure as hell isn't the United States of America when you see the amount of money going back to their home countries, and being bold enough to even admit to it that the priority is their home country with which they have dual citizenship. Well, you know what? Get a clue, guys. When you come from America, we all came from somewhere, and we pledged our allegiance to our country is standing here as the melting pot. We gave up where we came from, and we came here to form a new country based on liberty and justice for all. And all of these protected classes of citizens, I'm really surprised that ADL hasn't come after either you or I, because that you cannot have a protected class of citizens or people anywhere. If you can't question a group of people, they're the enemy. Right
Yeah.
where to look, right there. So by trying to hide it and hide the questions, if they were for real, they'd be able to have real answers, and they wouldn't be afraid to have questions asked of them. But they don't want, they hide it, and they continue to hide it and say, oh, you can't question this because these people are victims. Well, hold on a minute. If somebody is truly a victim, then I think we should ask questions in a respectful way, but we should be able to question these things and question the money that's gone to those two areas specifically. But it's not only that, it's like Hamas and Hezbollah and ISIS and looking at McCain standing right there with ISIS, and then McCain down there at the University of Arizona with the child trafficking funds that they put up there. I'm telling you what, these universities, every single one of them, and I spent a lot of time in college, right? All the universities need to be gone through with a fine-tooth comb to see what they've done, because I believe right now, from what we're seeing, there's good people and bad people everywhere, but they're using them as a domestic, intertwined foreign entity, which is the enemy of the United States. And
100%.
And I said it yesterday. I think the political parties are in the same realm because they've taken the dark money, they've taken the PAC money and such. When you start taking dark money and PAC money, you're taking foreign money and you're influencing it. And it's paid influence. And you look at the amount of money that the oligarch families have poured in the state of Michigan. You want to check that out. Check that out right there, because that's a black hole of despair and collusion. There's about 22 of them here. And if you want to see the intertwined working of a criminal enterprise, that's part of it. And that, where does that lead to? Oh, I don't know. Perhaps we've mentioned their name before.
Yeah, and for Michigan, since you mentioned Michigan again, you have Martin Lau from Tencent, who is a huge Michigan alum, hugely involved with the operations of Michigan. Eugene Yu, people forget this, from ConEck, who was caught basically stealing voter data and elections poll workers' data by the DA in Los Angeles, the assistant DA, until Gascon stepped in there and basically stopped everything, shut it down, returned his servers to him, and let him expatriate to Singapore, to Malaysia. And we're like, okay, why? What's the deal with our catching people?
Yeah, how did he so
letting them go?
Get away? I mean, that's like trying to. I mean, it was just like gone. He just
and then paid him $5 million for his inconvenience of taxpayer money, mind you, of Michigan taxpayer money.
I missed that one. I missed that one entirely. Do you know who's behind that?
Yeah, I mean, it's Tencent, and it's Alibaba, and it's Goldman Sachs, and it's Investor AB, which is the Wallenbergs and the Atlantic Council, and EQT Partners. And so back in the late 90s, like we talked at the beginning of the show about the coordination between traitorous factions, specifically like these Jewish supremacists in our country that got infiltrated into our government through Kissinger and certain terror attacks that happened and assassinations that happened. But I mean, Kissinger and Maurice Greenberg were hugely involved in that, as well as Kroll and a number of others, Noah Gottdiner and Kissinger, McClarty, L. Paul Bremer. They coordinated, Hank Paulson, they coordinated to develop this relationship, and they helped to establish the Chinese Communist Party, the People's Republic of China, to basically work behind the backs of, American, factions that believe America first, so to speak, that think that if you live in this country and you want to have an opportunity to do anything that you want and be in leadership and you're charged with stewardship of the morality and the soul and the compass of this country, that's great. You can do that, but you have to have your allegiance to this country first. And as long as you do,
you're a traitor.
Correct. As long as you have your allegiance first and foremost to the United States, and it's predicated on nothing other than allegiance to the United States, then I don't care what color or race or religion or you are. You're a brother, you're a fellow American, and I wish you all the best. Anybody else? You can believe and love other countries and do whatever you want. Don't touch kids, but like, just don't be involved in civic leadership. Like, if you want to live here and be dual citizen or triple citizen or quadruple citizens with any other country on the planet, I don't care. as long as you don't cause a lot of riffraff here and you're not involved with civic life. Don't come into this country owing allegiance to another country and owing allegiance to our enemies or giving comfort to our enemies, and then get yourself in position to dictate the laws in this country that allow you to run interference for like-minded traitors like yourself who are also committing similar crimes in this country. And Tencent and Alibaba and Huawei are hugely involved in Michigan, and they were hugely involved in that established relationship on the technocratic takeover of the United States in collusion with the CCP. And in 1999, you had Pony Ma, his real name is Ma Huang, and an attorney for Investor AB named Joseph Tsai, TSAI. His wife is Clara Tsai. They basically, Pony Ma and his buddies co-founded Alibaba in, I think, April of 99. Fast forward to August or September of 99, or October even, that's when, Joseph Tsai had gotten involved as an attorney for Investor AB. He liked the opportunity so much that he left Investor AB, or, the Wallenbergs told him to leave and go and work with Alibaba. And then next thing you know, there's $25 million coming in seed money from Goldman Sachs, SoftBank, which basically helped Goldman Sachs avoid going bankrupt and out of business in the 80s, and then Investor AB, which, as we mentioned, is the Wallenbergs, Atlantic Council, Donald Rumsfeld, 9/11, like those people. And so they build up this telecommunications apparatus. Next thing you know, Tencent is not far behind, and you have Martin Lau and you have Jack Ma. I think that Jack Ma and Pony Ma are probably related. And you have this huge corporate investor behind the scenes in all of this. His name, he doesn't get mentioned nearly enough. His name is Li Keqiang. He is the wealthiest businessman in China, wealthiest businessman in Hong Kong. He's in bed with Palantir through Peter Thiel's husband, Matt Danziesen, and Bridgetown Holdings 3. He is the sponsor of that firm that is Matt Danziesen and Daniel Wong, that went live on January 4th of 2021. Richard Li Keqiang's son, was the sponsor of that business arrangement, whatever it is that they're doing. And people forget this, that Matt Danziesen, Peter Thiel's husband, was a Blackrock vice president prior to just being, president of Thiel Capital, which is basically Clarium Capital Partners. But yeah, I mean, they want to whitewash all of this. And then in the Trump administration, we get Jacob Holberg, who is married to Keith Rayboy, one of Peter Thiel's business partners, that founders fund, who is fully on board with all this technocratic takeover of the United States that we talked about at the beginning of this show, and that they want to whitewash. And the undersecretary for AI, Sriram Krishnan, is a partner, Andreessen Horowitz, who basically worked with the president of United Health, whose CEO was just murdered. Like, this dude helped integrate AI into all of Andreessen Horowitz's basically branches and their arms and their focuses, especially the healthcare A16Z,
Wow.
which doesn't get nearly enough credit. Like A16Z, if your viewers, like, take one new name away, take away A and then the number 16 and Z. That's Andreessen Horowitz's health care, like, arm that they invest in with tech and everything. And basically they algorithmically baked in denying claims, denying covering required life-saving medically necessary procedures for people, in collusion with a lot of the names that we had already mentioned that have killed countless tens of thousands of people and saved them from having to pay claims. And they're doing it by baking it into the AI now. so that it does it automatically. And Sam Altman, like, people want to whitewash the fact that Sam Altman and Elon Musk worked together in building out OpenAI. Let's not forget about that part. Sam Altman from Bilderberg. And I mean, you look at everything that's happening, and then you realize, okay, why are they doing this? They worked with the Chinese to infiltrate our telecommunications, to control everything we say, to have backdoor access to our voting,
Everything.
to our communications, to what we research, to what we can find, even in LexisNexis. Like, they literally will go in and remove precedent that is unfavorable to the legal battle that they're currently fighting if you're the plaintiff and they're the defendant. That's how insidious this shit is. And I'm sorry, but like, I remember not that long ago when GPT-1 came out, and it was basically saying, like, Christians need to be exterminated, like crazy, heinous shit. That's like, this isn't just like, an oopsie or bad. This is coordinated programming into the AIML. Like,
It's an attack.
Yeah, this is like mens rea, folks. Like, this is not okay. And it's only gotten worse and worse. And they did this during COVID. How'd they do it? And they got in bed with the Chinese, and they took our tax dollars and Chinese money and built up these apparatuses. And you look at Facebook, you look at Palantir, you look at SpaceX, you look at Tesla, you look at Andreessen Horowitz and GitLab and GitHub, and they're all funded by Chinese, Li Keqiang, like Alibaba, Tencent, Huawei. They're all embedded in our elections, and Mark Andreessen is probably complicit through his relationship with GitHub and Microsoft, who bought out GitHub in 2023, like, with election fraud. Like, I'm like, why are you dictating to me that you're going to investigate all the crimes that are happening when I remember not too long ago, you were literally my sworn enemy telling me I should vote for DeSantis or I didn't give a shit about America. Meanwhile, me and my buddies, we've spent the entire pandemic being the ones who were fucking right about everything, and you were lying. Oh, and then you remember when you stole billions from us in the FTX scandal? Oh, it just so happens that the shit that I was talking about on the real estate, the 271 and 273 Oak Street thing, and the Ethereum Foundation and how they coordinated with Sam Bankman-Fried and all of that. Well, 2 doors down from 271, 273, we have 2 German spies from the Ethereum Foundation and Strauss, which is literally the people at UNESCO, Dan Goldman's family, Walter Haas Jr., like the people who fund the Eric voter registration platform, that are literally stealing from us and stealing our elections and stealing them around the world, and then trying to condescend us, with this pretentious, like, pompous ass attitude, like they get to arbitrate what appropriate decorum is. No, you're fucking illegitimate. And it's only a matter of time before the whole fucking, yeah.
Yeah, it's criminal.
If people truly knew, Donna, like, if I'm saying I believe it's 100 times worse than what I've already found, people who haven't read my feed and the feeds of, like, the people that I work with, it'll already be difficult for them to handle it. Like,
it's gonna take people a while to get up to speed, especially if they haven't really done a lot of their own research, or they're still eating this news feed from fake news. You're never going to hear the truth, and something will come out and say, oh, this happened in the helicopter and the plane, and it's like, why are you believing them now? Why are you believing them now? You got to go to other sources because they're still lying to you, and it's going to be very difficult for people to catch up, to understand how intertwined it is if they haven't been in it, because there's so many people involved in this. It boggles your mind. The next
I'm gonna give one more
Okay.
name before I finish this on the Chinese American trader collusion. and this is something that I put out within the last week, maybe 4 days ago, 3 days ago. Michelle Flournoy, Flournoy. She is a member of the board of directors at Booz Allen Hamilton. She is the co-founder and either chairman or CEO of Center for New American Security, which is CNAS, Victoria Nuland, Ukrainian bioweapons research, that whole thing, and WestExec, which is Tony Blinken, literally second generation Mossad. His dad was Robert Maxwell's attorney. His stepdad was Robert Maxwell's attorney on one side of the family. The other side of the family was just Warburg Pincus, CrowdStrike, like Felix M. Warburg, the first president of UJA Federation, which is, like we mentioned already, Mark Rowan, Larry Silverstein, James Tisch. That's Tony Blinken, who's just spent 4 years being our Secretary of State, whose co-founder, Avril Haines, literally planned the release of COVID at Event 201 a month before the pandemic started. Like WestExec, that's, Michelle Flournoy at Booz Allen Hamilton. She works directly with Horatio Rosansky, who's the CEO and chairman of Booz Allen Hamilton, at an organization called Care USA, one of the biggest, along with Save the Children and Santander, one of the biggest operations for kid trafficking. Well, it just so happens that Michelle Flournoy didn't bother to mention to everybody that she has a brother named George who speaks Chinese, and he's been fucking working for the Chinese since the late 70s, 1979. And he even worked with the Japanese in a bank called Mitsui. And he basically helped them build up this through mergers and acquisitions, this bank called Mitsui & Co. that has several branches in the United States. The headquarters in America is in Los Angeles. But this is one of their big, like SoftBank, big.
Oh, he'll be back in a second. That's a phone call. As this happens, live news, real news for real people, by real people at the kitchen table, kind of, sort of. So he'll be right back a minute. Let's see. Where'd you go, Jonathan? And
sorry, I got a phone call.
That's okay. I explained. I know that happened. But you know what? That's the beauty of real news for real people, by real people at the kitchen table here, is that it's real, it's authentic, and it's real, and nothing is scripted out. We don't talk about really what we're going to talk about until we get on and start the show, because it is authentic, and we're not scripting it out, and we're not curating the message. It's just two people talking.
Yeah. And
can't hear you, Jonathan. You there? There you go.
Well, it's not coming through my AirPods anymore, but I was going to say, we talk about Michelle Flournoy and the coordination with the Chinese Communist Party way back in, as early as the 50s, if not sooner. But, I mean, people forget that she was, long believed under Obama to be the pick for, like, Secretary of Defense. And she's the one that's telling people that, China is our biggest enemy. At the same time, she was getting to, as part of Obama's cabinet, at the same time, she's lying to him and saying, we're in an arms race with the Chinese for digital technology and AI, and we need to invest capital and resources towards, winning that arms race. She's literally in bed with the Chinese, and her family are helping share intelligence of our stuff with the Chinese and the Israelis. And she doesn't bother to mention any of this, but we send billions and we allocate and earmark billions of dollars for this. And a lot of the organizations that exist today are not genuine startups. They're basically taxpayer-funded, subsidized entities that just hung around long enough for the CIA to figure shit out, and they get to profit all of it. Meanwhile, we who invested in it, the taxpayer, gets literally no benefit except another tool that will eventually, if they're successful in the Middle East at doing what they are trying to do, will eventually weaponize those same tools that we paid for against us for total subjugation of the American people. And it's not okay. And that's another thing. It's like taking all of that into consideration and the fact that you killed my grandfather. It's like there is no us anymore. There's like no scenario that exists where I'm alive and you get away. Like that's and I know I'm not the only one who feels that way, Donna.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of us that feel that way. I'm going to bring this back because this is I think significant, and I had this on my channel because I actually went down to the affectionately called the Ford Museum, but it is in fact the Kissinger Museum. If you go down there to the Ford Museum, which is on DeVos property in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I went down there to spook around and take some pictures and such. Almost every picture you can clearly see that Kissinger is giving instructions to Ford, and that's Nelson Rockefeller is watching on with his approval, and Kissinger was the one who started CCP. So when you start looking at this, I'm going to see if I can go through some more pictures here because I had a bunch of them. And here's Ford's advisor. Every single one of these pictures, because they communicate through symbols and pictures. He's given orders. He's always pointing, giving orders, and everybody else is sitting there, listening and falling in line because it was all about being behind Kissinger. Almost always Ford's got his mouth covered and such, and they're falling in line. So there you go. There's the
Henry,
picture.
This is so important. So,
and then one more thing here. Hang on. So President Ford had a remarkable, cohesive, competent group. The overall tone of the Ford cabinet reflected the moderate conservatism of Ford's own Grand Rapids, Michigan background, with more than a tinge of the progressivism embodied in the new term Rockefeller Republican. The same Rockefellers that have been screwing with the country from the beginning of time. And then I have more pictures there, but every single one of those pictures is showing Rockefeller and specifically Kissinger, basically. And Ford is pissed in most of these pictures. He is pissed. I'm friends with somebody that grew up with him. And he said, I remember when Ford went astray. He said, I grew up with him. And he said, I remember what he was and then what he became. And it's unfortunate.
So I've written about this a lot because it's hugely pertinent. And it's an entity behind the scenes that I believe is chiefly responsible for us having not gotten justice for COVID yet. And that's the Rockefeller Population Council, which was founded by John D. Rockefeller III in 1952. And it involves 4 organizations. Rockefeller Foundation, obviously, is one of them. You have Markle Foundation. You have Ford Foundation. And you have the National Institute of Health. Those 4 entities make up this Rockefeller Population Council, where they want to engage in eugenics, specifically against certain ethnicities. But this has been their plan from day one. And it's crazy when you see that the NIH itself is one of these 4 entities. But Markle Foundation, who is in the Markle Foundation? Well, you have Gilman Louie from InQTel, who is basically the guy that Alex Karp and Peter Thiel went to with basically nothing but a couple of theoretical algorithms. And they basically told Gilman Louie at InQTel, hey, can you guys help us make a Palantir? Like make a company that's, viable. And so they took their algorithms to the CIA's venture capital arm and said, here, what can we do? And next thing you know, we have Palantir. You also have Suzanne Johnson from Pfizer and Rand Corporation, which is behind the MK Ultra program. You have Cheryl Cohen Efron, who is the wife of Blair Efron, the vice chairman of Council on Foreign Relations. She herself was the the treasurer at Brookings Institute, where she worked directly for David Rubenstein. David Rubenstein at Duke University in 2013 to 2017, when he was chairman of the board of trustees, he helped set up in Wuhan, China, Duke Kunshan University, which is the partnership university between Wuhan University and Duke. And this is David Rubenstein, chairman of Council on Foreign Relations, chairman emeritus of Brookings, co-founder and co-chairman of Carlyle Group, and former owner of Booz Allen Hamilton. And he and Hank Paulson and the trustees chairman today of Duke University, Lorene Sperling, who herself is a Mossad asset, they all sit on the board of this Duke Kunshan University in China. And they are all focused on this idea of population control, which is really just biological terrorism and targeted eugenics against the globe under the guise of the world is too big or too populated, and we need to protect the globe. And so you look at them and they're all the same people that are behind the climate green energy bullshit. Meanwhile, you could fit the entire world's population in the state of Texas and still have room to spare. And I'm like, yeah, there's something else going on here. And
you know what it is? It's they're after our natural resources. So you see what the biggest crime syndicate in the state of Michigan is the DNR right now. They're clear cutting our land. They're not protecting it. They've claimed 4.6 million acres, and they are literally pilfering all of our natural resources. Nestle did the same thing. Nestle spent $250 for a permit, and they have pulled millions of gallons of water out of Michigan. I've seen it. I was up at Camp Grayling, and I was in the officers club there for quite a while, going through some documents and such. And not only that, but touring the area. They are literally clear cutting and decimating this state. If I hit a business and I did what they have done to the state, I would be thrown in jail and I would never see the light of day again. But 1,600 employees from the DNR that control our land, our minerals, and our trees, they've just decided to claim them, and the waterways, which by coincidentally are not being built on. Wouldn't that just be a real convenient way to traffic children into areas that nobody can get into and have access? I'm just saying it, but they're after the resources, and just look clearly into this, because the DNR is not what they're supposed to be doing. They're absolutely not following the law, the Constitution, or anything. They're literally have turned this into partnerships with industry to take over our land, use the state land. The people never see it. We should be so rich in this state. If they were doing the right thing, we'd have all kinds of money to take care of our people.
They're doing it in California too, through an organization called CADIZ, CADIZ, and it involves literally the former California employees and the California retirement, like CalPERS, financial managers. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to work for Californians. You're not going to sequester like all the natural resources control under your purview, so that then you can, in the future, weaponize and extort the American people with their own natural resources under like your own ideology that nobody else subscribes to. And
that's
in California,
exactly what they're doing.
You have the pistachio king and queen of California have control of like 65% of the state's water. Are you fucking kidding me?
Wonderful foods. It's crazy.
Yeah, Leon Black's dad from Apollo, his dad, he was an Orthodox Talmudic rabbi named Eli Black that got into finance, and sure as shit rose up the ranks quickly and built his own financial firm. And he at one point controlled he controlled 30% of the bananas that were bought and sold in the United States when he bought United Food, and he owned Chiquita as a result. And it's funny and ironic, I guess. It's not really funny. It's darkly funny, I guess. He tried to bribe the Honduran president because, like, his company was struggling and he was trying to do a backroom under the table deal so that he wouldn't have to pay like embargo taxes and shipping taxes that everybody was having to deal with trading with Honduras. And that was one of his key customers and key importers. And he tried to bribe the guy. He goes back to America. The Honduran president was not happy with it. And next thing you know, he falls out the 42nd floor of his office in New York. And that's Leon Black's dad. And this is the dude that now is that big Jeffrey Epstein. I'm like, is bribery and extortion and pedophilia, like, is it baked into the sauce of these people? Because fair dealing and
being just a good human instead of
honest.
Honest. Is this so hard to do?
And it's such a level that Donna, I'm starting to believe that a lot of these people who we look at as like the tech geniuses aren't actually, they're not, they're psychopaths for sure. Psychopaths. But they're just faces. They're actors. They don't know the first fucking thing about any of the stuff that they pretend to be experts on. That's how bad it is. And Columbia and Penn and Georgetown and probably even Michigan and Stanford, it will be proven. The facts will bear out. And it's only a matter of time at this point. I've seen enough to say. It will be proven that they're handing out degrees to people who did not do the work to get them. There are a lot of people out there with backgrounds like, something Johns Hopkins, consultant for, McKinsey or Bain & Company or Boston Consulting Group and MBA at Wharton School. I'm like, there's not 700,000 of you people out there, you idiots. Don't make it so fucking obvious. It's only a matter of time. You're going to get caught now. How does every executive have this same bio?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's funny, like sad it's sad. So I'm going to.
And how do I know it's true? The president at Harvard was one of the first examples when I started figuring shit out. Claudine Gay fucking forged most of her entire PhD. I wonder if she even wrote it. I mean, obviously it was somebody else's work, but I'm genuinely curious if she even actually was the one who entered in the keystrokes. Like, and then Penny Pritzker, who through her, one of her closely linked private equity firms, Black Diamond, and Stephen Deckoff, bought Jeffrey Epstein's island right after Jeffrey Epstein lost control of it due to the legal proceedings, because her brother Tom is one of Jeffrey Epstein's island's most frequent visitors. And this is who bought their top spot at Harvard. She donated $150 million to Harvard and became the leader of the corporation. And then whenever it was time for her to step down under the Claudine Gay fiasco, they don't step down. All right. It's only when white people like me, when we at Penn, for example, all right, you have Scott Bach and you have Julie, I can't remember the other one's name. It was a president and a trustee. And Goldman Sachs comes and starts funding all of these pro-Hamas on-campus protests at UNC, at Columbia, at Penn, and at I don't know if it was Michigan or if it was Wisconsin. One of the two. They have all of these and meanwhile you have Mossad assets monitoring social media and on the ground spying on American college students through an organization called the the Israeli On-Campus Coalition, the ICC. It's on 17th Street in Washington, D.C. if any of you guys happen to be interested and want to go talk to them about it in person. But they're spying on college kids with protests that they funded. And then they're threatening and extorting using facial recognition technology on American innocent college students who aren't sufficiently pro-Israel in reply or response to these protests that they constructed. And then they use that as the pretext to remove people like me from leadership positions at these universities and install more of their own assets. And Julie Platt and Mark Rowan and Josh Shapiro and Ross Stevens, who is hugely involved with. Remember when I mentioned the guy's name, Eric Knoll from
Yeah.
Stone Ridge, the chairman of the board of governors of FINRA? Yeah, he's Stone Ridge, and he's at Penn colluding with the governor, who's illegitimate himself, and two Mossad assets that run Penn, Mark Rowan and Julie Platt, and they demand that Scott Bach resigns, and that the president, Julie McGill, that they demand that she resigns, and because their response wasn't sufficiently protective of, Jews from anti-Semitism. I'm like, but you guys are doing it. Where's the rule that protects us from your bullshit? Like, where
Right.
is that law? And
They
and I'm
hide
like,
behind their labels. It's a hiding behind their labels. But
100%.
I don't have any problems with the Jewish people, Chinese people, or people anywhere. It's the governments and it's those people that use and hide behind those labels, the infiltrators. Those are the ones we need to keep our eyes on because
Bingo.
they're not for real. The people that are running these organizations and claim, ADL, oh my God, you can't say anything wrong. They're not Jewish. They're not real, actual people. They're part of an organized crime network which transcends all borders and countries. It is a global crime syndicate, and they try to hide under labels and get everybody to go, oh no, they hate this people or they hate that people, that other people speaking out against it. It's like, no, that's not it at all. We're speaking about criminality and evil. It's either good or evil, and I don't give a shit what the label is at this point in time.
My
Really?
buddy and I were talking about we need to make an opposition to the ADL, which, quick history, the ADL was founded in 1913 at the response of Leo Frank, who had been caught raping and murdering a 13-year-old girl, and then he tried to blame it on a African American man who worked at this pencil factory that he was a manager for. And the trial went, and he was found guilty unanimously of a jury that was like half Jews and half non-Jews, and it was clear that he had done this. And some technicality after the court or after the legal proceedings and his incarceration let him out of jail. And so the people who were outraged by this went to Leo Frank and lynched him, and he absolutely deserved it. And the ADL basically was created out of this Chicago Italian Jewish mafia to, in an outrage for, this miscarriage of justice to protect a pedophile child murderer. And my buddy and I were talking, I think yesterday or the day before, just in the comments of a post about how much of a racket the ADL is and that we need to make an opposition racket. And I'm like, I'm not going to lie, the Defamation League sounds kind of badass. Like, would you guys buy those t-shirts? And I'm like, I was thinking when we were going to talk today, I was like, I'm going to run this by Donna. If I just had like Defamation League on a black t-shirt with white writing, like making fun of the
one.
FBI.
I would buy the first one hand.
I would send you one.
It would be great.
Don't worry about it.
That's what I would do to support the effort. So I wanted to put this back up here because it's like I think this is significant. Now let's go back to the Kissinger Museum, which is on DeVos property and is the Kissinger Museum on DeVos property and such. And it's kind of amazing. So you got to run right to the fire sometimes. People are like, oh no, Brandenburg's standing there with DeVos. I'm like, yeah, damn straight I am. Because if I've got a problem with somebody, I'm going to walk right up to him and let him know I exist. I'm not going to run the other direction, guys. And that's the way it is. And who is there? Of course, Eric Prince is there. He looked like he was throwing up in his mouth a little bit when I walked up, but that was okay. And then if you want to know if they were hanging out together and they're still having Christmas together, the answer to that is yes, And so if you think, and if anybody wants to say anything, I could put my little Dutch shoes on because I'm part Dutch and go, la, 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 feel sorry for me because I'm Dutch and you said something against it. It's just too bad. They're all.
If people knew who Eric Prince, if people knew who Eric Prince was, they would be revolted by seeing him or Betsy DeVos. And like people love, I still think people are, under the spell of the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is Barb Van Andel Gabby, who is a director of the parent company of Amway, Alticor. And I'm like, yep, Heritage Foundation is like British intelligence. Like you go person by person on the director, and it's like, okay, GCHQ, Mossad, GCHQ. I'm like, who are these people?
Oh, and no, but we're speaking now about the Christians. Let's just talk about all of them, these Christian organizations and such, which have all been infiltrated too. And yeah, it's under a label. And which churches shut down during COVID? Most of them. Why? Because of the money that they were getting in the threats of the 501c3 and 4.
To my knowledge, it was all of them, wasn't it?
There was a few of them that actually didn't take the Kool-Aid and bite the money, the bait that was in front of them, but most of the Christian churches shut down. Therefore, they were in collusion with a panic and the wrongdoing with COVID, and I believe that most of them got some sort of payment involved in it. I know the schools did. I saw the rolls of the schools that got paid during the shutdown. Wouldn't you say a normal person would say, we're in a shutdown, therefore our expenses are less? Almost all of the schools in the state of Michigan got big dollars donated to them. I think in Muskegon, there was one payment for $36 million during this whole shutdown. The shutdown, they raked in tons of money through the school systems, which once again is money laundering. And if you really look, there were tons and tons of building projects that went on during this with the COVID money. And I want to know who got the contracts on all of these building projects during COVID, because it's another form of money laundering if you really look at it again. And during that thing, you know what they did? They installed 5G in the schools, and they also installed delivery mechanisms for sanitizing the schools through their heating ducts. I would have my kids, well, first of all, I was done with this whole thing years ago. I'm old and ornery at 60 years old. I was done with it. So I didn't put my kids in school because I was totally done with it back then. I might be a little bit ahead of everybody in that regard, but they have a delivery method to sanitize the school if this comes out. What the hell are they spraying on your kids? And is it for disinfecting, or is it for infecting and spreading?
They had this big push for ventilation systems.
Right.
And I'm like, guys, you not only have you been wrong about everything, you've been lying about everything. And that means, like, not only am I, like, when you started accusing me of being an anti-vaxxer because I didn't want to get the COVID vaccine, even though I've had vaccines in the past, and my background, my educational background is biomedical sciences and pharmacy, and like I was one of the people that was.
Oh, another phone call. We'll see what happens here. He'll be back on. Real news for real people, by real people at the kitchen table. It's going to happen. I think this discussion is really highlights, though, the fact that we need to be really watchful on everything that's going on around us, because I'm going to tell you right now, if I had kids in the school systems, well, before that, I'm telling you, I would absolutely be questioning these delivery systems in the HVAC systems that they installed. And they also screwed around with the energy to be able to monitor and cut energy delivery to the schools at the same time. I mean, the whole thing was all engineered, but there's not a chance in hell I would let my kids go to those schools not knowing what they're doing to them, spraying on them, teaching them. There's a school in Portage, that they said they were lowering the age that they were exposing children to pornography in the schools. Came out, and I'm like, this is, don't you feel like you woke up in a whole new dimension, and it's just crazy?
Well, yeah, and sorry for that. I just got my second phone call during our time together. But yeah, not only were they wrong, they were lying. And and my background being what it was, like, I realized this in probably right around the time, maybe June-ish of 2020, when they started with go ahead and feel safe protesting BLM and George Floyd and all that shit. But if you're going to a college football game on Saturday, you're killing grandma. And I did COVID the right way. I did it in Chicago, where a lot of the fucking tyrants were. And Lori Lightfoot, who is rivaled only by J.B. Pritzker himself.
Yeah, Pritzker, the #1 in transgender clinics.
And then we found out Pritzker did the lockdowns and then took his ass and his whole family's ass, and that's a lot of ass, to Florida.
So did Whitmer. Whitmer did this. Whitmer was doing the same thing. All of them. They're all of them. It's like rules for you, but not for us. That was what was going on there.
And Daniel Loeb, whose wife, Margaret Loeb, is a 20-plus year consultant for McKinsey and sits on the board of directors of EcoHealth Alliance that literally created the fucking virus, helped create it. And Daniel Loeb, who runs Success Academies, is an investor in AIG again. That's our Con Inc. media, Betsy DeVos and Ben Shapiro and TPUSA. Like, they all went to like South Florida and bought real estate at steep discount and lived their life, lived the dream, while the environment that they created for everybody and the mandates, the tyrannical mandates that they dictated to everybody, had just been put in place. And then we get Gavin Newsom, whose right-hand money guy is Lenny Mendonca, the senior partner emeritus at McKinsey, is caught having dinners at, the French Laundry and at the Super Bowl with no mask on, with all his, we're better than you, like, bourgeoisie. And it's like, guys, you don't even realize, like, this is America. This is not, some third world that knows nothing of liberty or revolution. Like, these are the people that'll kill you if you try to take their liberties and harm their kids. Like, if you take away all means of peaceful recourse and you subject people to biological terrorism and judicial misprudence and just complete miscarriage of justice, and tell everybody that there is nothing that we can do, you don't have any rights, and this is how it's going to be, and then we find out that you were lying about all that shit and you just enriched yourself and you did it to subjugate and really commit eugenics against
murder
tens of millions of Americans. Like, peaceful recourse is the best option for you, because, like, there is no us anymore. There's no, like, we're just gonna forget the past. Like, I still remember people calling me a white supremacist Nazi for saying I didn't need to get vaccinated after I'd already been infected with COVID. And guess what? Yeah. I was right. And I knew I was right then, and they were lying. And only a year later, after all the hoopla started, did we find out that I was right. And I was like, yeah, I wasn't even excited about it, because I was like, no shit. Like, we knew this. And the reason I even had a Twitter account to begin with is because I realized that they were lying about this COVID shit. And who was lying about it? Who was doing it? Scripps Research Institute, Christian Anderson, Eric Topol. Scripps is Warren Buffett, all right? Berkshire Hathaway, who actually convinced Daniel Loeb to come into the investment that he and his buddy at Salesforce, Mark Benioff, had gotten into, called Snowflake. Snowflake is basically a data company that's based in this consortium up at Columbia University that involves Mark McLaughlin of Qualcomm and Reid Hoffman, PayPal Mafia, and LinkedIn, and GoDaddy, which is Bob Parsons, and basically our most secure infrastructure, like GoDaddy and Akamai and Amazon and Cloudflare, control basically our nuclear secrets, our COVID-19 patient data, our voter rolls, and our census data. they were colluding together to destroy the U.S. Census through U.S. Census Project 2020 for fraudulent apportionment. Liberal states get overrepresentation in Congress. Conservative states get underrepresentation. Thankfully, myself and a few of the people that I work with are actively involved in unwinding that racket. And bet your ass we have unwound it. It's just a matter of time for them to parse the documents. But these people, they are going to meet justice. But at the same time they were doing that, they were using platforms like ERIC and Arena and Impactive, third-party voter registration databases to basically defraud our voter rolls in each state, especially Michigan, by a factor
Jonathan
of 11 to
Brader, the director of
14%.
elections, who was sitting as the chairman of the board of ERIC. You can't make this stuff up.
And I mentioned Levi Strauss and Walter Haas Jr. and Daniel Goldman at the beginning of the show. That is ERIC. That is who funds ERIC. 2 employees at ERIC are paid. One is, what is his name? He's not important. I can't remember. The other one is Erica Haas, Haas, from that same Levi Strauss, Walter Haas Jr. So Claude Levi Strauss obviously funded Levi Strauss, and Walter Haas eventually came to work with Levi Strauss. He worked with him for 25 years, 30 years maybe, and then ascended to basically becoming president and chairman of the company. And now his whole family includes like the Gelman family that were involved in murdering Israelis on 10/7, while Dan Goldman was in Israel, as was Cory Booker, who was in Israel when 10/7 happened, who is really tight with our buddy Jason Wingard, that we've mentioned as the linchpin between Columbia and Penn University, and who's on the board of directors of Kroll, and who is former vice dean at Penn and is now dean emeritus at Columbia. Like, this is the racket. I mean, it's really grotesque what they've done, and they've used, now the focus has been energy, and for some reason Margaret Hamburg, the former FDA director, who got the whole remdesivir and COVID research with Fauci rocking and rolling in the early 20 teens, like 2011, 2012, and 2013, as they were figuring out remdesivir that was originally designed for Ebola, supposedly, and they knew it was harmful, so they wanted to use it for COVID because they knew it would cause kidney failure. And so that at the same time they insisted on remdesivir, they also insisted on suppressing hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, because they invested in kidney companies, like AI-based kidney startups that they knew would be necessary in the wake of forcing remdesivir on the American population. And cancer companies are the same. Like, they knew that COVID and the vaccines were going to cause tons of brain tumors and turbo cancers. And they invested heavily into these companies. And if the American people ever became cognizant of it at scale, they would hunt these, like, it would be exactly like H.W. Bush said. And it's funny because that rings so true, and yet today, Cerberus, a company where Dan Quayle, HW's vice chairman, or vice president rather, is chairman of Cerberus. And we catch Cerberus in the elections networks. We catch Cerberus in the Brazilian financial system, draining the banks of money. We catch Cerberus hacking COVID-19 master data sets that are held, like I'd mentioned just a minute ago, within, basically secureserver.net, which is a GoDaddy. It's GoDaddy's original platform. That all our nuclear secrets, all of our COVID patient data, all of America's most precious intel, and it's a sieve. It is carte blanche for not just Israel, but for Germany and for Ukraine and for the UK London, Gunzenhausen, Germany, Frankfurt. We see so much in Akamai, and it ties back, and you're looking at it and you're like, how did it get this bad? And then you remember on 9/11, supposedly the first victim who died, Daniel Lewin, was Israeli Sayeret McCall with Bibi Netanyahu and Ehud Barak. He was the co-founder of Akamai. And next thing you know, we have Akamai as basically the federal CDN, the content delivery network of the FBI, the NSA, and the CIA. And then we get Google, who named Eric Schmidt CEO 6 months before 9/11, and suddenly Google is the search engine of choice. And then next thing you know, we have Sun Microsystems and Symantec and Ericsson and Amazon. And I'm like, oh man, there's so many smart people. And you realize they basically hatched from one central point of origin. And that's Kleiner Perkins that we mentioned showed up in 1972.
Wow. Going back to those dates again, there's a lot of things that came out around 72, the ERISA Act that came out at that point in time, and actually gave a pass to the unions to pilfer their own retirement funds and pensions. And that's another big rabbit hole to go down, but we should go down that. You know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see some more investigation into the people of Michigan and how they're colluding together. So like, I've gone into the Gretchen Whitmer here a little bit, and how she was tied in with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Her daddy was in charge of Blue Cross Blue Shield, and how they passed that to Dan Loeb, and the big payoff that Dan Loeb got.
I want to know that information about Blue Cross, because Blue Cross is partnered with Anthem, which is run by the same entities, UJA, that I just mentioned. A name you need to remember is Ruth Raskus. She is the chief growth officer for UJA. She built out Anthem's AI health platform, and Anthem and Blue Cross Blue Shield and that kidney organization that I mentioned that was the startup that would benefit from remdesivir harming kidneys all over the country, that company is called Somatis. They are all partnered together with people backing them, like, Biden's number 2 for COVID response, Andy Slavitt, who was the head of Medicare and Medicaid for Obama. We're about to get into the Medicare and Medicaid racket with Doge and open those books. Andy Slavitt, who pilfered Medicare and Medicaid, and then Kimberly Spina. It was a caught Medicare fraudster. Like her and a number of others were caught in 2018 defrauding Medicare and Medicaid for millions. She's a director on the board at EcoHealth Alliance again.
We need to go down the insurance fraud that's going on and how they've manipulated everything in that regard, because when you look at, like, say, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, it was a beneficiary trust, and with the stroke of a pen, they turned it into a mutual. So they took it away from the people of Michigan and they made it into a corporation, basically. And Whitmer's daddy was at the top of that, and then passed it off to Dan Loeb. Dan Loeb was the one responsible for getting Whitmer into the governor's seat. And then you start looking downstream from her, her squire Nessel and the Joker Benson, who is now saying she's running for governor of Michigan, violated campaign finance rules and started announcing from the offices in Lansing, used her position, used the offices to give herself credibility, street cred there. And it's deep. And
Dana Nessel was not ever going to be governor of Michigan. She is a murderer. She is definitely involved.
Agreed.
She is involved with the murder of Samantha Wohl, the president of the Isaac Agree downtown Detroit synagogue, who was the political director of Dana Nessel's 2022 reelection installment. And why? Because Katz Watson Group, who basically ran Dana Nessel's campaign, also represents the Lincoln Project. They represent the New Israel Fund. And here was Samantha Wohl, who was stabbed to death just steps outside of her door, literally 2 weeks after 10/7, I might add, Samantha Wool was also the founder of this organization that's designed to create friendship between American Palestinians and American Jews. It's like the Palestinian or the Jewish Muslim Friendship League, and she was the founder of it. And they couldn't have that because Dana Nessel, Gretchen Whitmer, and Jocelyn Benson are puppets to be installed to secure this new Israel like genocide that's going on in the West Bank and Palestine. And I know, last thing I'll say, I know people are up in arms about, Trump having Netanyahu at the White House and saying that the United States is going to take over the West Bank. I actually, and you know how outspoken that I've been about, we cannot ignore this. I don't give a shit who is in office. I truly think that the West Bank and the United States taking over control of it is actually going to prove to be a good thing, because if it's under our purview, we can have our people there. And we don't have to have IDF soldiers indiscriminately shooting any brown person who tries to...
Children in the back.
Correct. And I think just like destroying USAID is a necessary first step to end this global Bolshevik money laundering operation to fund and subsidize the worst horrors humanity can imagine, I think that taking over this open-air prison in Gaza and the West Bank under American control is a necessary path to peace and to actually neutralizing or marginalizing this whole, we're going to extort the American people, you're going to give us what we want, or we're going to kill, you and all these Arabs over here. So I don't think it's actually a bad thing. I'm still wait and see, but I'm not as upset about that as as a lot of people are, and I was about other things previously.
I'm not upset about anything right now. I'm just watching how this is going to go. So far, everything's looking like it's going pretty well. So I'm going to assume that there's strategy behind things that we don't know about. But so far, it's looking pretty good. We're seeing these organizations torn down that have been absolutely weaponized against America and the world. It's not just us. The whole world has been harmed by it. So I'm kind of sitting here watching and believing that truly that God is behind all of it. I mean, I really do believe that God is behind every bit of this, and not the nonsense that they the fake religion that they hide behind, but real God Almighty is behind this, because I do believe that He listens to our prayers, and He knows that average, everyday American and good people just want peace. We want to live at peace with our neighbors. We want to be able to enjoy life with each other, and the things that, let's go, sit down somewhere and have a beer, or let's go get a hamburger here. Let's go have a barbecue in our backyard and do something that's productive. Let's look at our neighbors and see somebody that needs help, and we'll go help them. Americans are incredibly generous with our time, our money, in wanting to help people. But these monsters, these bastards that sit on the top, they're not even like the same set of individuals we are. They're psychopaths. I don't even think they're human. I mean, we're going to go there. Whatever they are not human in the same way we are. We actually care. They don't. There's nothing about them that gives them any motivation to care about anybody. They see other people as a conquest, something to take over, to give them power. It's like they're drunk with blood and power. That's what this is all about.
Correct.
So seeing the fall of these global monsters that are out there, and I hope that there was a whole bunch of people taking notes on the names that were brought forward, because it's not just the politicians, it's all of them. It's the economic weaponization, the corporatocracy that was weaponized against the United States, the surveillance state, the nonsense that happened at 9/11, and all of a sudden the Patriot Act just appears out of nowhere. Whoop-de-skip-de-doo. Let's go ahead and sign that. And now we've got every American under surveillance, so we can weaponize the surveillance against them. If people are not talking about surveillance, they're probably part of the problem. So this is a really big deal, and we can't turn our backs on any of this. And Jonathan just got the third call of the morning, but we've been on for a long time. And we can never turn our backs on this. It's not okay to murder children. It is not okay for soldiers to shoot unarmed children in the back. And I don't give a crap what label they're under. Those people need to be brought to justice. And it's amazing how what they'll do is they'll shoot them in the neck or something like that, not necessarily even to kill them, but to disable them, so that all of a sudden the burden on the family and the heart-wrenching and the absolute hatred that keeps going forward, the Hatfields and the McCoys kind of crap that's going on. It's like women against men, men against women, African Americans against whites, you name it. You name the labels that they pit us against each other with. It's all of them. The labels have to go away. If you're living, if you're breathing, if you're a good person, if you don't commit evil, high five you. Let's go and hang out together. We have no problems with people, but they've taught us how to hate each other, and we need to get away from that, because it's them. It's never been us. It's always been them. And it turns out they need us. We don't need them. This thing gets ripped out by its evil roots and burned right to a unrecognizable, lump of ashes. Guess what? The only ones that are going to be hurt by this, really, it's going to be the ones that are part of the global crime syndicate and that have been hiding the crimes. I'm pretty extra sure that the rest of us will MacGyver ourselves through anything and actually come together as a family and help each other, because it's in our hearts. The goodness that God built into us is in our hearts. We will step up to the call. We will help each other. We will defend each other and our, the liberty that each one of us has been given under natural law, given by God. We will answer the call. We don't have anything to be afraid of. Those people that are sitting at the table right now, they got a lot to be afraid of.
For sure. Sorry, that was my third call that I had come in during our time together.
We got that. I explained it. So, well, you know what? This has been a very long show, and I got to tell you, I just, little brother, I just love you to pieces. This is such an, you're like little brother to me, right? And it's just amazing how much work you've done and all the people that stand with you. I got to tell you, high five, salute, hearts, hugs, whatever, because they're just no finer. There are no finer fighters for the United States of America than people such as yourself who've done this type of intelligence work and investigative work to bring forward the truth. You want the truth? Go to his page and sign up. Follow him and all of his friends, because this Jonathan is the real deal. He's the real deal. And
your check's in the mail, Donna. I'll have it out to you by the end of the day.
Except I don't take any money for any of this. I do this all for free, people. I have got no money coming in here. This is Donna Brandenburg effort with pretty much myself and maybe one other person that kind of helps on occasion. I set up things, I promote things, I fund things, and I don't take money from people. This is the way we all need to be. We need to tear down this political industry that takes money for every single thing that they do, and do it because it's in our heart, because we love our neighbors, our family, God Almighty, and we do this as our duty. This is not going to work in any way, shape, or form unless everybody gets in the game and decides to say, you know what, I love America. I'm willing to fight for this. And I'm not going to give up. I'm going to pass on information that Jonathan posts. I'm going to make sure that even if you take 5 minutes or an hour a day to repost good stuff to tell the people are clueless out there, that's all part of it. And that's pretty simple to do. I mean, everybody's on social media all the time. How hard is it to pass on good links and get people help people get educated on what they've tried to hide from us? So I'm just very proud to know you. I really am. And everybody that Peter Berninger and some of the other people that are so busy that they don't have time to talk, but you always are, and I appreciate that. So let's say a
appreciate
prayer.
you, Donna.
Thank you. Let's say a prayer, and we'll go on to our day here. God first. And truly, the whole nation needs to remember that this nation was one nation, created one nation under God. We are not little gods. We can sit here and talk about frequency healing and all that, but you forgot something. The something is that God created it. Don't worship the creation. That's what got people in trouble from the beginning of time, is worshiping creation and not having a relationship with God Almighty. Talk with him, walk on the earth with him, ask him what he wants you to do today, how to fix the problems in your life. All the answers are right here. He leads us out of it, and he's going to lead us out of this again. I've got complete faith in him. And so anyhow, let's say a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for our pets who bring us joy and come in right at the perfect time every single time, and who love us unconditionally just as you do. And we are so thankful that you unconditionally love us no matter what we've done, the faults that we have, the things that we've done that we would never do again. And we know that you'll say, that's okay, you're my child, and pick us back up after we've fallen, put us on our feet and say, you know what? I believe in you. Do it again. You're going to get this. Time and time again, you do this for us. And when we've gotten to the end of all things and we've done everything wrong, you sent your only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. Jesus Christ, our Savior. We thank you so much. For everything you've done, the unspeakable sacrifices that you've made for us and for this world. I don't know how you do it, quite honestly, because all of us that have been researching this, we're kind of done with this and going, why is this continuing on? And it's because of your mercy, because you care, and you care not only for the people who have had crimes against them, but the people who have done that are totally lost, who have committed these crimes. We pray for our enemies, that they would turn around, that they would open their eyes, that they would do the right thing, that they would come and fight alongside of us, that all the labels would be gone, and we would stand together as one people, the people of this earth that you created. And we thank you so much for everything that you've done for us. Let your favor be upon all those who love you. Give us hope, your continued hope, discernment, wisdom, health, healing. Bless Karen and her parents today. I'm going to call that one out specifically, and what they're going through. Give them peace. And when we have to face the greatest challenges of our lives, help us to have your strength, that we can stand through anything and everything, through the worst storm ever. Let us be standing with our last breath in service to you, and in devotion to those things we love in the United States of America and on this planet. We thank you so much for everything you've done. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
There you go. Well, I what's your cat's name?
This is Sarah.
Sarah.
But, I just call her Girly.
Girly.
She's named after Sarah Connor from Terminator, because she was like, I don't know, she showed up on my porch like at 10 weeks old. She was always tough, and like I would mess with her and she would bite me. Like I used to, granted, I'm culpable. I would mess with her even more, and she would just like, and before she was big enough to hurt me, it was funny, and then she got like really tough and it started hurting. And so then like she's just been my bestie. She's great, and she's now like the most obsessed like, little plus one. She's awesome.
Oh, that's cool. Well, we're all animal lovers, and you know that I raise and rescue horses, as well as our little chicken empire here, because I will not be put down by the globalists that want to destroy our food supply, and bees and such. And a word to everyone out there: when you see, there's a difference between these people who are doing pure evil out there and just normal human beings who just are being human. We make a lot of mistakes. People make mistakes. We say the wrong thing sometimes. We don't always know how we come across to people. But give people grace, because a lot of times people are just trying to get this thing figured out, life the way that we are, right? people are the most like horses of any animal on the planet. And I can tell you that animals, and especially horses, they react mostly out of fear. They're afraid, and it's for fear and for survival. So when you see people around you doing the wrong thing, remember being a horse trainer. And horse trainer will stand there real quiet and let them be crazy for a while until they decide that you're not a threat. And then all of a sudden they see the consistency in how you live your life. The consistency in how we live our lives breeds trust in others. You have to do the right thing. You have to do it the same way every single time, consistent, trustworthy, and unwavering. And when we do that, we heal our world. We heal it in ways that can't be talked through. It's by standing together with each other in people's worst moments and refusing to leave them, being faithful, kind, and unwavering. So with that said, I want you on again soon. This is like my favorite conversations ever, is just to sit. I just like to listen to you. You could just talk 10 hours and I'd sit there and go, whoa, this is amazing. But with that said, everybody, God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. Remember to make it a great day. It starts with having a heart for others, for having love, being mentally tough, refusing to back down when there's a threat. It's not okay to back down. When you see a threat, see something, say something, and shove it right in their faces. Jump right in front of it. Run to the fire when you see it. And cowards, they're cowards. They'll back down. It's all blow and no go. So, and if you have the protection of God Almighty, you don't have to be afraid of anything. You walk right up to it and tell it what it is, and never, ever, ever back down. Because you know what? There's a lot of us out there that are doing that. We're not going to back down. We're not going away. The fight isn't even remotely over yet. We just got started. And be there for President Trump. He laid his life on the line for all of us, and all the good guys who you will never know their names, that have given their lives for this country, that have fought for us. It's the everyday person's time to stand up and stand with them and be with them to defend them. Don't expect them to feed you like baby birds. It's our time to walk in there like the warriors that I know we all are, and stand together, shoulder to shoulder, for the United States of America. Because where the United States of America goes, the globe goes, the world goes. And it's our time right now to be defenders of all good things. So have a great day. I will be on tomorrow with Off the Grid with some other wonderful patriots there, talking about how to make the world a better place. And honestly, the more we know about survival, the less they have the hold over us. If we totally get off the grid, what you gonna do, global crime syndicate? Pretty much nothing. So there you go. So I'll be on with that tomorrow. And so join us tomorrow. Stay on the line, Jonathan, and everybody else. Have a great day. You're loved.